Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. And today I have Justin Goodwin. Justin is the Director of Operations at Slate Milk, and his specialty is food and beverage. So he spent almost a decade in food and beverage industry. And he's the kind of guy you want on your team because he's what he calls himself the revenue accelerator. Now, he didn't kind of fall into this. It kind of grew on him. So he loves startups. So he gets involved with startups. And whenever he got involved with startups, his job was to accelerate revenue growth. And that's what we're going to hear today and what goes with the territory of growing revenue. And also he's a proud father of two sons, right, Justin?
I have a 2-year-old son and I have a daughter on the way.
Oh, so. Okay. All right. So soon to be two. Soon to be two. Yeah. Okay. And his company, Slate Milk, produces a line of chocolate milk and lattes, 100% lactose free, and revolutionizing how sugar is used in drinks. And their customers are strength and energy-oriented customers. And we're going to hear more about the product. But more important, Justin is currently presiding over the whole operation that takes the company to the next level. So we're going to hear all about scaling an operation and how it impacts the right things to do and the wrong things to do and how they impact, and in particular, Amazon performance. So with that, Justin, tell us your secret, tell us how you do it, and in the process, give us a little bit of a perspective on how it's impacting your Amazon performance.
Absolutely. And Nick, I appreciate you having me. And if I'm ever back out on the job market, I should have you sell my abilities because you do it much better than I do. So yeah, I mean, from a startup perspective, especially when you're in these stages of hyper growth, and we've seen year over year growth now in the 300 to 400% range. It's really about setting up the network around it. And to simplify things, I mean, from an operations professional, I only need two things. I need product and I need a way to get it into the customer's hands. So I think the first thing that you look for in scaling an operation is, what do I have available to me capacity wise to manufacture product? How does the sales forecast and our ability to produce mesh with one another? So if sales is saying that we're going to do, I don't know, I'll just throw blanket numbers out there. If sales thinks we're going to do 25 million and 25 million takes 1 million units, what was our run rate last year through our manufacturers? Do we have the ability to expand through those manufacturers as far as capacity is concerned? And then if not, how quickly can we onboard new manufacturing partners in order to satisfy that demand? So that's always my first step. Second is making sure that we have places to fulfill. So right now we keep fulfillment segregated by sales channel. So we have our e-com fulfillment teams, and then we have our retail fulfillment team. So your brick and mortars. We have situated the brick and mortar ones in conjunction with where the majority of our business and the retail and the brick and mortar businesses are set. Mainly East Coast. We have some West Coast distribution, but mainly East Coast oriented. Again, some on the West Coast, some in the Midwest. And then our e-com, we've centrally located into one facility for now. We're actually in the middle of an expansion there too. We'll add another facility in 2022. But our e-com facility was onboarded with the emphasis of putting the product into as many hands as quick as possible as we could. So we went with a centrally located to achieve 3-day shipping to 90% of the United States out of that facility. So those are the first two things I think about when I think about scale, and I think about scaling an operation and taking it from the high thousands or hundred thousands to into the millions, and then all the way up into the tens and hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue.
So let's break that down. So you first you talked about planning for inventory, right? So how do you go about that in terms of managing, or is that not your job? So you said 25 million sales, 1 million units. So who calculates that, and how do you calculate that?
No, it's a great question. So what we do is we have an S&OP process that is the director of sales, the director of finance, and myself. We sit down and collectively, and with the marketing department as well, because the marketing handles the majority of the e-commerce and Amazon forecasting metrics. And what we do is they'll have a goal set on them. We'll look at the past year's sales. We'll look at velocities in stores. We'll look at velocities online. We'll look at where spend was put and where we got the best ROI on that spend, be it Facebook ads, Google ads, Amazon, things like that. We'll hear the goal from ownership, where they would like to sit. And then the first thing that happens is sales put out a plan saying, okay, if we're going to meet that goal, I need to do this. Here is how I'm going to go about that. So it could be, we're going to add 2 new SKUs, and that's going to go into our entire current portfolio of customers at the brick and mortar level. Or we're going to add 2,000 stores through a new distributor, new retail partner, whether it's direct or whether it's through the distributor. Once that sales forecast comes to me, I take all of those numbers, we input those, and obviously we try to structure it so that way it's on a weekly basis. So that way we can see lifts for things like BOGOs or OIs at the distributor level without overreacting to them, I should say. Because I think there's a tendency, especially at the startup level, to say, I've done 100 units every week for the first 5 weeks of this year, and then all of a sudden I spike to 500. We need to stop planning for 500 a week, when in reality, you need to be able to zoom in and say, well, that's because we were on promo, so we knew we were going to have a high week. We're going to return to baseline after that. So making sure that we're not overreacting. When I take that data, I put it into a production plan that I've developed over the course of the last few years across multiple companies. And I plug that in, and that tells me what type of inventory I have available at a full network and then a sales channel level by 3PL based on what we're looking to produce. So the production actually gets entered manually, and then you're shown the snowball effects of ordering in specific quantities on specific timelines. And then obviously we spit out the cost, and finance tells us whether or not we're extremely out of line and if it's something that that can happen or not. So that's how the original plan is developed. So I'll look at an entire year or 2 years. We'll look at the customers that are planned to be added, what the velocities are expected to be. We'll run high and low scenarios to make sure that, okay, listen, if we only sell to 50% of that forecast, what does that do to our inventory runway? Do we still have enough time to make sure that we can sell that before it goes to code? All of those complexities. And then we'll present that plan out to ownership, and we'll say, listen, let's say that in a couple of months we'll start doing 2023. So in June we'll start to look at 2023. So when we look at that, we'll see what our sales goal is. We'll see what sales and marketing thinks that they can achieve based on that sales goal, and then we'll look at what we need from a production standpoint as a result of setting those sales goals for ourselves. We'll then pass that through finance. We'll understand, do we need to raise? Is that through retained earnings? How are we going to finance that project? Or these sets of projects. And I'll immediately go out and start to secure capacity for that year to make sure that we have dedicated line time to our products to make sure that we can deliver on the promises that we're going to start to make to retail clients, and obviously then to our e-com and Amazon customers.
So how long does this whole process take?
So I would say that there's 2 variations of the process. So the first one is, obviously we do this monthly. So we have an S&OP meeting monthly where we're dealing in real time, any supply chain constraints on my side, any financial constraints on the finance side, and any changes to the sales forecast on the sales side. So we deal with that monthly. So that happens in about a 2-hour meeting, and then probably ensues in about 4 hours worth of work to adjust accordingly. For the forward-looking year plan, that's normally something where the 3 directors at the company, the senior marketing manager, and the 2 co-founders, we sit down for about an 8-hour session, and we go through multiple scenarios. We go through, we move things around. We might say that X% of the business is going to come from retail, X% is going to come from online, and Y% from club. what happens when we move these things around, because obviously there are different price tiers. So if we push volume to, say, e-com, where we have a higher price tier than we do going into a distributor, obviously, we need to do fewer units in result, make fewer units in order to achieve that sales goal. Whereas if 90% is going to come from retail, that there's obviously going to be an increased need for more product, and we need to sell more.
So in terms of you said that you'll start in June for 2023. Mm-hmm. So in terms of timeline, how long does that usually, by the time you are done with it and say, okay, here is the plan for 2023, where would that be? September, October?
The goal would be to have that at the end of Q3. So we would want to have that ready by September 30, October 1, because then we need to give ourselves enough time. So things like onboarding co-mans, especially in the beverage industry, as I've learned over the last year, is much more complicated than it was on I specialized before in baking mixes and ready-to-eat products. It was much simpler to get onboarded. The machinery was consistent. It was the same thing whether you made it in Idaho or Florida. So it's a little more complex from the beverage side. There's more testing and there's more analytics that need to go into the pilot process, in the onboarding process at the co-manufacturer level. So October 1 is kind of the latest I want to be considering onboarding an additional manufacturer to have them live by January 1st of the following year. That 3-month window is kind of what it takes to truly get a product up and running. And I think that that's probably a good practice for any company to undergo if you're manufacturing any type of food or beverage, just because it gives you some wiggle room. So I usually try to set that process at about 12 to 16 weeks and assume that there may be, we might get it through in 10, worst case scenario, 16. So let's make sure that we have enough inventory to carry us through that if there are any delays or complications.
So what I'm hearing is you're planning for the forward plan for the whole year is about 3-month process, and then you give yourself another 3 months to onboard suppliers as contingency, or you want to use them regardless?
So, I mean, it could be both. In previous jobs, it was mainly contingency. Here, it's such a specialized process, and I think that the beverage industry is just so competitive and has become more competitive through the pandemic, with people putting an emphasis on shelf stability, health conscious, grab and go. They don't want to think about what they're putting in their body because they have so many other things to worry about. So I think it's become even more competitive. And as a result, you want to be first in line when available capacity opens up, and you want to begin constant communication. So here, the goal would be to, if we were looking at a manufacturer, and we have great relationships right now, and I don't see the need for additional facilities at this time. But I would say that if we were looking at new opportunities, we would be looking to strike on those. We wouldn't be looking to just add those as contingencies. It would be true redundancy.
Yeah. So, okay. So that explains of course. And then the other thing I heard you mention is plan is only good when you're making it. The minute that it becomes reality, so now what you plan for January, and January is here and starts to play out, you have adjustments to make, and that is
correct.
Something that you do on weekly basis or on monthly basis. How do you work?
So as far as the scenarios are concerned, if we're just focused on core business, core set of products, and there aren't going to be any major changes, we're not planning on adding any customers, adding any SKUs, it's something that I probably monitor once a quarter. It's not something that really causes any peaks and valleys. It's when we're making these, when new customers are being added or new SKUs are being added, that it needs to be constantly monitored and modeled for. Now, I would have already modeled the scenarios for 25, 50, 75%, and then 150 and 200% of the forecast, just to see where we sit. And I share those scenarios out with the leadership team at Slate. And we kind of go through like, okay, listen, if we double in sales over the next 6 months, what does that do for our inventory runway? Were we carrying enough safety? I like to manage by safety stock. So I like to basically say that there is a slice of inventory that is available for sales, and then there is a grouping of inventory above that is safety stock. and we can sell through the safety stock, and we can kind of get a gauge as for, okay, are we selling through 12 weeks of safety in 6 weeks, or are we selling through it in 18 weeks? It never touches my saleable inventory, so I'm always confident that we can continue to meet our current customer demand while we kind of gauge what is happening with that safety inventory and whether or not we need to make adjustments up or down in our ordering process. So that's kind of, and I've been fortunate throughout my career in the last 7 years to come across some great people who've kind of taught me, if you carry that safety, you don't have to be as reactionary, and you don't have to be as scrappy, and there'll always be a scrappy attitude behind a startup, and that's great, and it's what I love. But you also don't want to get caught. You don't want to have to be scrappy every day. You don't want to have to do that every day. You don't want to be singing for your supper every day. So having that piece of information given to me where it was, hey, listen, manage by your safety inventory, see what that does. Don't allow it to touch your sales inventory. And when you get into your sales inventory, obviously you've either made a mistake or things are going really well from a sales perspective, and you just need to up your ordering. So that's kind of how I look at the inventory. And it's really important for me to model out those scenarios to see, okay, if we really flop on the sales forecast, how long do we have before this product codes out? Are we going to be able to sell it? And if we double that sales forecast, how long can we survive for? And do we need to start to make any types of concessions through any sales channel? And then how do we prioritize those concessions? Nobody wants to make those. Nobody wants to be in a position where they have to choose between their sales channels. But obviously, it's just something that comes with the territory.
Yeah. So just this, what you're talking about is demand planning, and that is
Correct.
the main driver. If you don't have inventory, it doesn't matter what you do. Your advertising and everything else goes out the window. So all these models, is this something that you built yourself, or is it homegrown, or is it off the shelf system that you're using? Is there such a system that you can just buy, plug in? Because a lot of people don't understand all the moving parts of the tools to use in demand planning. So where does your model come from?
So again, like I said, I've been extremely fortunate in my career to come across a lot of great people. When I started, when I really started to get into Excel modeling in 2018, I didn't even know what a VLOOKUP was. I was Excel illiterate. I was completely a warehouse logistics supply chain guy, and I didn't really understand it. And I had a great boss at Keto & Co. His name was Ted Teakin. And still to this day, I've never seen anybody operate inside of Excel the way he did. And I kind of told him what I was thinking, and obviously he gave me input, and we went back and forth, and I started to develop some skill in Excel. I started to look at his modeling and copy the types of formulas that he was using. And then I put together the bones of what I now use as my production planning tool. And he gave me his input, and it kind of grew and grew. And over the course of a couple of years, I feel like I've gained a level of expertise, at least inside of my model, where it's reliable. The inputs that override decision making are only inventory. So obviously, if you're not selling through the correct amount of inventory, so the only real manual work that needs to be done to it outside of entering the production is updating inventory, and I can have an admin do that for me if I want. So this is a 100% homegrown model. It's kind of expanded over years to include things like product costs. We built in dates that basically allow lags for receiving time, be it from the manufacturer to the 3PL or from the 3PL into Amazon. It has an allocation tab that allows for inventory to automatically be put into transit locations for 3PLs based on how the product sells at that given sales channel that the 3PL is responsible for. So it's become extremely robust over the years. And I've found it reliable, and it allows me, where we're always looking at a year, it allows me to communicate with sales and marketing about, potential dips in inventory and where we might have some pain points. You asked about whether or not there's automated systems out there. I've tried some of them, and I think that a lot of them are getting better. The problem that I've had with them from the standpoint of being with the startup is that they rely heavily on historical data, and as a startup, you just don't have it. I mean, we're not Coca-Cola. We're not in every store in the country. We haven't been selling to every store in the country for the last 50 years. We just don't have that historical data to allow a simple algorithm to build out our demand plan for us. So we use NetSuite as our financial and our inventory management tool. We decided to go that route early instead of waiting until we reached a certain level and then having the pain of cutting over from another inventory system. We went straight into NetSuite from Excel models, but we don't use the demand planning feature just because we feel that we know the business better than any algorithm is going to know our business, at least at this point.
Yeah. I asked this question because this is such an important thing. And a lot of people, you know how it is. Entrepreneurs are usually very good at coming up with product ideas and marketing them and selling them, and they are great deal makers. But really, when it comes to these moving parts, entrepreneurs are not really very good at it. So they think that they can just get something or buy something off the shelf, but there is no such thing. On demand planning, the consensus out of everybody I speak to is nobody says, oh, I just use this off the shelf. It just does not work. So if you really want to scale your business, what I'm hearing is everybody has to build their own demand planning system around their company's needs, around the trends that they know that they're going to experience or they have experienced. Just looking at historical data just does not work. So my next question out of the two things that you mentioned as crucial for scaling is allocating the inventory. And what I heard you separate them as retail inventory and e-commerce inventory. Now, how do you decide? Because, e-commerce can spike. And what do? Then do you dip into the retail inventory? And then if you do, then obviously these are B2B customers. You don't want to upset anybody. So how do you juggle that aspect of it?
Yeah, and I mean to kind of to go back on what I said about why you can't have a demand planning software. I mean, we're reliant on historicals, right? And then we're reliant on any type of visibility, especially from the retail side, that we can get into the distributors. So again, I'm extremely fortunate. I work for a company that pays attention to and analyzes spins and Nielsen data. So we're able to kind of see how our products are performing and where we think we can tweak that and where we may see some peaks as a result. So it makes my life a little bit easier knowing that I can rely on the forecast. I just put out my 9-week and our retail team's forecast was like 90%. And I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So as far as that's concerned, allocation is definitely the most complicated part of the inventory, especially when you have the multiple 3PLs at the stage of growth that we're at. So it's a great question. What I do right now is I go back to the safety inventory, right? So when I'm ordering from a co-manufacturer, I'm ordering with that safety stock in mind, and I have a goal in my head of how much cover I want to have at each location, and it varies by sales channel. You can be a little bit more flexible. Sometimes you can be more flexible with retail because you have the 2-week lead time on your PO. Sometimes you can be more flexible with the e-com stuff because they're just more, the customer there is more understanding and forgiving. So you also have to know your audience and where your priorities are. But I go back to that safety inventory because if I'm carrying enough safety inventory into these locations, I should have given myself enough time to get a new order in from the manufacturer as opposed to having to move the freight between locations, which makes me cringe, and I think would make any operations professional cringe when they're spending money to move inventory between two locations in their network because you're adding cost without adding value. And it goes back to the old adage of the more touches on my product, the more expensive, the more reduced my margin is. My goal is to never move inventory from one warehouse to another inside of my network. That being said, it happens. There are certain things, especially again, as a company in its second, third full year of sales, that you just can't account for. And there are going to be times where we spend money that I definitely don't want to spend because it's against everything I stand for as an operations professional. But the long and the short of it is, if I'm carrying and I'm managing that safety inventory the way I should be, in the way that we set out in our planning to do, it should be minimal. And it has been. We've been fortunate again that we've had great forecasting, we've had good planning, and I don't want to take all the credit for that because I don't deserve all the credit for that. The like I said, the forecast being what it's been has been fantastic. We have a great marketing team that is constantly paying attention to spikes in our e-com sales, and then obviously looking forward towards finally being FBA at Amazon, looking at what the potential is there. And we already have those numbers in, and we're already planning against those numbers. And I'm hoping as a result that the allocation is, if I'm 75% accurate on the allocations for the first go around, I'll be happy. And then obviously just improving on that as KPI.
So this is a good segue to Amazon aspect of it. So I get the sense that you are doing your own fulfillment for Amazon orders, or is it a 3PL that's doing the fulfillment?
So it's a 3PL, and so if I backtrack into 2021, we did intro our 12 packs onto Amazon FBA, with some late year inventory disruptions, with some Amazon receiving delays. The flow of inventory wasn't consistent, therefore we decided to pull back. The one thing that we were able to do in that, though, was we were able to prove concept. We sold extremely well with no ad spend, and we think that Amazon really likes the product, and it did well for the short time that it was on there. So we were able to get something out of that. Unfortunately, us sending the inventory in coincided with Black Friday. We had a huge Black Friday on our own site, so we decided to go the FBM route and allow our 3PL to fulfill for us. And again, we've been, the 3PL we work with right now is somebody that I've worked with in the past at other companies as well. So I understood that I could rely on them. We had our automation set through NetSuite for tracking information and fulfillment details going into Amazon prior to the launch of FBM. And then we had a human, either myself or the director of marketing. We monitored FBM orders for the first 2 weeks ourselves every night at midnight to make sure that automation was, because we knew there would be hiccups, and there were. We managed that manually, so that way when the automation failed, we were able to get the tracking information in and keep us within. We did go over the acceptable fulfillment target of, I think it's 4%, a couple of times, but we were able to keep that to where Amazon wasn't putting us in jail, and they weren't warning us that our account was at risk. So we put some fail safes in place to make sure that we were meeting the standards that Amazon was expecting out of us when we did go to FBM. And I think FBM has been a success for us to this point, and we're looking forward to finally getting enough inventory.
Just to clarify, when you say Amazon liked our product, you're not selling to Amazon as a vendor, right? You're selling directly yourself. So you're referring to the Amazon customers.
Customer. Correct.
And I'm curious, how is it that without spending any advertising dollars, you were able to get traction to your listings? Because they're new listings, aren't they?
They're new listings. We went live with them. I think they were created in July or August. We finally got some inventory in September, October. Like I said, there were massive delays, and I mean massive. We fulfilled out of Dallas, Texas into a Dallas Amazon facility, a Fort Worth facility, and it took 35 days to get the inventory available. So it was unexpected. So we started to make plans elsewhere where we allocated inventory to sales channels that were proven and that we knew that we could deliver on. So it's funny. I think our marketing team did a great job on keywords. I think that they honed in it. I know that they spent a lot of time looking at competitors, how they were gaining traction, the types of customers they were going after, the keywords to focus on. And we were able to get decent, if not good, placement on Amazon pages when people were searching for like products. And we weren't doing anything. We weren't doing the advertise our product on a competitor's page, all that stuff that you see all the time. We were really just honing in on keywords and seeing if we could prove this concept and if it was going to be something that was viable long term. And I mean, we sent in We sent in 400 or 500 units of our number one selling product on our own website, which is a variety pack of the three different offerings we currently have. And I mean, I think the first week was a little slow, and then they sold out in a couple of weeks, and it was unexpected, to say the least. And I mean, Amazon, even at the time too, they raised our ability to send additional inventory. So if we had it, we would have sent it in. But yeah, it was surprising, and it was a good surprise.
So I can tell you what happened. I'm not sure, of course, because with Amazon, it's always reverse engineering things. But knowing what I know and understanding the events, so first of all, your marketing team did a great job with their research on keywords. So you got to do that. But what that did was, when you launch a new seller, or when Amazon has a new seller and then they launch their account and the listings go up, that's the honeymoon period. Mm-hmm. So you marry the honeymoon period with good research and good content, and in the process, you got the most of it. So that's something that can work to your advantage if you are prepared for it, prepared for inventory, prepared with the content and everything. So do you know roughly what kind of a conversion you got on your listings?
I don't. I would have to pull that information.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure it's something I could get from my marketing team, but I don't know that offhand.
So this is another thing. So conversion is key in all this. So you can do the best research, and then Amazon gives you the best exposure, and your product shows up, fairly well in searches. But if they don't end up converting on the page, people land on the page and they don't convert, then obviously it's all for nothing. So conversion is key. And a lot of people don't really track the conversion, because just by tweaking the conversion a little bit, you can increase your sales exponentially. So this is something. And the ironic thing is, I'd love to find out how you guys are tracking conversion, because the data is not available unless you're downloading on daily basis and looking at it. So it's something that, but that's the bottom line. Conversion is what you have to stay on top of all the time if you want to drive sales. So as far as you also mentioned your preparation for launch with NetSuite. So NetSuite is an ERP system. So that is a system that you have to have if you want to scale, right? Otherwise, you end up using 5 different systems, each one tracking different, and you don't see the information in one place. What was that like in terms of preparing the Amazon launch?
So it was the NetSuite implementation was a long, arduous process. The director of finance and I did it together with obviously the help of the NetSuite consultants. And then we also brought Celigo into the mix, which is an app that allows you to connect marketplaces and 3PLs to NetSuite to perform those automated tasks that you want performed, right? Bring the orders into NetSuite, push them over to the 3PL, and then fulfill back, and then provide that record keeping information back to the sales source. As far as Amazon was concerned, the connection was actually with Amazon Celigo was actually pretty seamless. We saw the order flow begin right away, and it didn't miss a beat. We immediately saw those orders come through. The issue started to become the way that things were scripted on the NetSuite side for getting tracking information back. We noticed that we had some issues where if a customer ordered multiple items, or if they ordered this multiples of the same item, that only one tracking number was coming back because NetSuite wasn't recognizing the multiple lines. They were only recognizing one line with a multiple quantity. So it wasn't bringing both track numbers back. So that was one pain point. We had another issue where the FTP files were getting stuck in Celigo and not passing back through to Amazon. So we had to do some manual work inside of the Celigo system to push those FTP files through in order to see the fulfillments. And I would say that it took about 2 weeks to really solve those pain points. Once we went live early to mid-November. And since then, I think I've found one order one FBM order. It was in the last actually couple of weeks that marketing alerted me, hey, listen, for some reason this order is showing up as late. We shipped a bunch of orders around it. Is it the 3PL? I dove into it and it just for some reason didn't script over to NetSuite. Soligo grabbed it but never pushed it through. There are some idiosyncrasies in the system, especially with NetSuite, where if they think it's a fraudulent purchase, they'll hold the order off. If there's not inventory available, sometimes they won't allow the order to come in back order. So we've tweaked some settings to make sure that even if inventory in the NetSuite system isn't accurate, if we're going through a cycle, if there's inventory in transit, that the back order feature is working correctly and the orders are allowed to flow through. And consequently also be fulfilled even if there is zero inventory available. It'll go into the negative, and then obviously we can fix that. We can fix those issues. So there was some minor pain points, but overall the experience has been good with NetSuite, Soligo, and Amazon working together to get the customer the information that they need, and to keep us out of Amazon prison, as I like to call it. I don't want to go there.
So there's another interesting thing that I found out when I was working with a client. They also were in the process of migrating to NetSuite, and they used ShipStation to submit their shipping data. And what we found out was, so when you receive an order, Amazon assigns an expected ship date immediately. And this is like to the dot, like it comes in at 9:05 a.m. on, March 25th. That means if you put 3 days for shipping, March 28th, 9:05 a.m. is when you're supposed to ship. 9:06 makes it late.
So I know that all too well.
Yeah, so you know how it is. So what happened was that expected ship date is not actually when you shipped it. It is when you submit the shipping data to Amazon system, right?
Correct.
So if you may have shipped it yesterday and not forget about sending the shipping data, you send it the following day, it's too late.
Yeah, they don't care.
And even though shipment went out, it doesn't matter. So this is something we found out, and of course nobody takes the blame. Not that anybody is looking to blame anybody, but you want to find where it went wrong. And what I learned was, through nobody's fault, this can happen because Amazon API times out. Systems are always submitting data, and of course, when they are submitting data, they connect through API, and then first there is the handshake, and then the data starts to go up, and somewhere along the way, API times out. Then nothing is going anywhere, but the system thinks that it's gone through. So those are the things that you really cannot be prepared for. So you have to be monitoring constantly, right?
Well, and on that too, you need to make sure that you're aware of the time zone, right? So, I mean, some companies might script their FTP files or their EDI files at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, if you did Amazon at 4 o'clock in the morning, it means you missed the West Coast window because they're on Pacific Standard or Pacific Daylight, whatever it is right now. And that means if we're on the East Coast, that we have a great 3-hour window where we can fulfill. So we fulfill between 12 and 12:30 every morning, and our orders get scripted over to Amazon, which means we hit them at 9:30 their time. We close out the day that the order was meant to ship. If I had those FTPs run at 4 o'clock in the morning instead, I would be late on every order every day because it would have been 1 o'clock the next day with Amazon. And like you said, it's not that they don't care and there's no human ability for NetSuite to feel anything, but I mean, they're working, their system handles so many orders a day that they can't hone in on the 27 orders that Slate did ship on time, but for some reason they didn't script over in time. I mean, it's up to the brand at that point to make sure that they've done everything they can do to meet Amazon standards if they want to continue to sell on that, because there's no forgiveness. It's straight business 101. They need us far less than we need them. So
exactly,
you just have to adhere to their processes.
Yeah, they want the customer experience. And the other thing that people don't realize is Amazon has thousands of sellers, millions of customers, and there is no way that they're gonna know anybody in any way whatsoever other than the information they have about the seller. And the information about the seller is not, oh, this seller is located here and there. It's all about your performance. So they're tracking every single thing. And one of the machinery that they built that is great is they have a metric for everything. So it's not like they're looking at data, not knowing what to do with it. They have metrics, they have flags they set, and then they have actions associated with those flags. So, I mean, they know exactly how you are performing, and they can even anticipate what you're going to do next. And then they take preemptive action because they want to take care of their customers. Their customers are shopping.
Yeah, it's why we decided to pull back from the FBA side. We didn't want to constantly be going in just to achieve whatever revenue that we could achieve and then going back out of stock. So what we've done is we're currently in the analysis of potentially changing things like pack sizes, pack outs, what will be sent into Amazon FBA. Do we want to send every product into Amazon FBA? Do we want to send only variety packs in? What's the long-term goal to go into FBA? Is it to just drive trial at a place that customers trust? And we get to reach so many more people than we're already reaching with our email marketing and with our ad campaigns? Or is it to be on Amazon and have Amazon be a key part of our revenue? And I believe that that second point, having it be a key part of your revenue, is beneficial to the company long term, because they're just better at everything than everybody else is. They're better at fulfilling orders. They're better at getting it in customers' hands. Exactly. The reviews, people go to Amazon now to review products. Nobody trusts a Google review over an Amazon review, because Amazon has 5,000 reviews on this product. They have 200 1-star and they have 4,500 5-stars. I'm going to go to Amazon and I'm going to check that out. Whereas Google had 17 reviews, they were all fine. And you don't know if it was their brother, their uncle, because Amazon also has a metric that can make sure that you're not just buying reviews. So yes, you feel like when you go there and you're shopping there, and especially for the first time on a product, or you're trying a product for the first time, that you can trust what you read on Amazon, and that Amazon's not just going to give you the thing that's best for them, because really all of it's good for them. They just want to make sure that their customer continues to come back and shop with them, as Walmart tries to build out their business, as companies like Deliver try to compete in that space. And I don't know if they'll ever get there, but Amazon, obviously, when you're the biggest and the baddest, you're going to have people coming at you all the time. And I think Amazon's number one goal is to continue to have customers drive trial and repeat business on their website.
Yeah, they call it the best customer experience, and that's what their business model is. And in fact, this is something that was, I don't know if you remember, but it was a company called Zappos. You heard of Zappos? So Amazon acquired Zappos. As Zappos founder, Tony Hsieh, he was suffering big time because his investors were putting so much pressure on him about how much the company was bleeding. And he stuck to his guns and he said, look, we are going to provide the best customer service. That is our differentiator, because that will come back with a significantly reduced customer acquisition cost down the road. So in fact, I remember on ABC, I think it was one of those 60 Minutes shows, or ABC, some consumer show, but a customer was on the phone with a Zappos rep for 7 hours talking about shoes. So 7 hours. And they said, this is it. So Amazon acquired Zappos exactly for that reason. And that's what they want to do. They want the customer to keep coming back, which brings me back to the FBA, FBM model. So if you really want to improve your conversion rates and you really want trouble-free way of scaling your online business, FBA is without a doubt is the model. In addition, your fulfillment costs will never be anywhere near, it's going to go right down, which puts money to the bottom line. However, you really need to be set up for systems. You need to be set up for, fail-safe systems to track all those. And now you have one more location to track for inventory, and replenishment becomes key. So I'm sure you already know all this.
Well, when I learned Amazon and what a beast it could be, was a few years ago, Keto & Co. launched a product on Amazon. It originally, we were accounting for what we thought it would sell in relation to our other products. So we kind of just, we did guerrilla math on it. We were like, well, all right, this is what we think it's going to do, and we think it's going to grow at this rate. And we were actually pretty close. So we went from 500 units of this product in January to around 5,000 units of this product in May. And we were like, all right, we think we're going to baseline out there for a little while. And we were, at that time, the company was looking for an Amazon ad agency to start helping us out, driving more page views to our Amazon page and things like that. And before that could happen, I remember I was on the trade show floor. A colleague of mine gave me a call, and they're like, hey, I know you're at this trade show, but have you checked Amazon today? I go, no, I haven't. So I jump on my phone to Amazon, and I see that all of a sudden that product's on a 15,000 unit per month run rate. And we're about to stock out in the next couple of hours because we're selling 500 units a day now, instead of selling 500 units a month or 5,000 units a month. And that product actually continued to grow and became one of the best sellers on Amazon. It was the best seller in its category. But it's just, you almost can't account for that. And that's why I think that you try to get that traction on your own. You try to spend as little as possible at the beginning. But having somebody like you or another Amazon ad firm that can kind of see the writing on the wall and understands how Amazon's metrics work and algorithms work and how they drive volume for a specific brand and product, I think it becomes necessary if you want to maintain. And I think that too, I mean, that's a good problem to have, right? I stocked out because I sent 12,000 units in and we're on a 15,000 unit run rate. All of a sudden, I couldn't account for that. But it would have been nice if I had known. I would have ordered more. I would have sent more, and we would have crushed that month.
Yeah. And also, the other thing that people don't realize is, if you're using FBA, it's great because it's trouble-free. All you're doing is you're watching numbers and then you're taking action. And you don't have to worry about employees, fulfillment, complaints, delivery delays, carriers, none of those. However, if you run out of inventory, it takes you about 2 months to get back to where you were in terms of your rankings. Correct. So you really cannot afford to do. So my recommendation is always, you must develop your own metrics to track, not necessarily metrics, but there's 3 things you need. You need KPIs for your Amazon operation. What should you be tracking? Number 2, what are the numbers that should be flagged for those KPIs? Well, you're watching the metric all day long, every day. So that's not the idea. You want the metric to alert you when it hits certain number. So those are the trigger points. And the third thing is, what are the things that you need to be doing when you hit those trigger points? This is, by the way, how Amazon operates. Everything is automated. They already 100%. Thought of what they want to see, when they want to know about something happening, and what are they going to do about it when that does happen. And they automate all that thing. They don't even touch the machinery. That's what you have to be doing. So if you operate that way, obviously you're going to have no problems. And by the way, the beauty of being able to, it takes a while to get started this way. It's a mentality shift, systems shift, everything. But now you spend your time honing in on all these little bits and pieces that you can even bring to perfection one step at a time. And of course, their impact is exponential on the business because you're basically plugging the holes in the operation. Otherwise is going to be leaking. At the beginning, you're just fighting fires, right? So, we ran, so let's do this, let's do that. But when you start to have some kind of a mainstream operation, the operation is still leaking. So you can focus on those. So that's the way to build it. And that's why it takes time. But the rewards are incredible. So let's talk a little bit about your company in general. So what are your goals? Now, I can see, you are the revenue accelerator. It looks like it is accelerating. So what are your short-term goals and long-term goals in terms of revenue multiples and what can be achieved?
So We're looking at a 300% year over year going from in 2022. So we're looking to close 2022 at 3x 2021, and we'll look to probably double on that in 2023. So those are our revenue goals. And I'm sure anybody listening that has access to Zoom info can go check out what our run rates and revenue is, and they can do the math on their own. But so those are our goals. As far as operationally and for sales channels, we'll continue to expand the retail business. We'll continue to look to go nationwide in the retailers. And like I said, we're nationwide in some retailers, but still a heavy concentration to the East Coast. We're in about 4,000 stores right now. So we'll look to make a push from the East Coast out west, and we'll try to hit it all the Safeway, Albertsons, Kroger's, and everything in between. So that way our product becomes more visible. Or like I mentioned earlier, we're exploring different types of bundling and pack sizes from the e-com level, and how those play at Amazon, we don't yet know. We know what we want to go into Amazon. We have 2 new SKUs launching in the coming months. So we'll actually have more offerings. It'll be a vanilla and a vanilla latte product. So we're excited about those. We think we're filling a gap for our customers that look for those flavors. I mentioned that we're adding that second e-com facility just to get better ship costs, a little bit more labor allocated to our account. And also we'll be able to now even expedite further how quickly customers receive their orders from us. And then the big one, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on an Amazon Legends podcast, the big one for us this year is getting Amazon FBA going and starting to focus on some of those KPIs that you mentioned. I mean, the big one for me is always we need to achieve some level of consistency in sales. We understand that we're going to have some peaks and valleys to start. And then it's almost a set it and forget it mentality. It's not as simple as that, unfortunately. I wish it was. But making sure that the inventory goes into Amazon, and we already have basically what I do in the modeling process is I send replenishes every 2 weeks, and I send 4 weeks of inventory every 2 weeks, as I account for the fact that it's going to take 2 weeks for Amazon to receive it. So I just constantly send that now. And obviously you need to pay attention to what Amazon is allowing you to send, because if you can get more, and Amazon gives you some decent data too. I mean, they show you your last 30, they show you what your recommended inventory is. You know that you can go above that by probably about 10 to 20%, depending on what how much volume there is. Obviously, if you're selling 1 million units, they don't want 1.25 million units. They want 1 million. But yeah, it's really getting that, because we think that by itself will mirror our e-com business. We think that will reach a lot of customers and drive a lot of trial. And whether or not they decide to continue to purchase on Amazon, or they want to come over our site and see if we have anything else that's going on, great. But we'd be happy with them to stay on Amazon. We'd be happy to continue to fulfill through Amazon. And we think that that's going to be the what pushes our D2C business to the next level. So right now, I don't want to speak out of turn, and I hope everybody at the company is still in line with this. Right now, the goal is to be back Amazon FBA with our variety packs on June 1, or at least to replenish on June 1. So for a mid-June reset, and really there should be no looking back at that point. It should be constantly funded. It will be prioritized not above, but it'll be prioritized in line with the rest of our business. It will no longer be the place that takes the hit when inventory is low, because we also feel that our planning is getting to the point, and our execution on the planning is getting to the point where, barring unforeseen circumstances, we shouldn't see any of these lapses in inventory moving forward. So that's those are the kind of the big open items. Obviously, we'll continue to strengthen our processes as a company. We're still young, we're still learning, and we're just really looking forward to see what 2022 has in store for us.
Great. So this was great, Justin. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live, and what do you do outside of work when you're not working, if there is ever such a time?
Yeah,
Also,
I mean,
by the way, give us your contact information, or company and your personal. We will post your contact information on our website, and also on YouTube when the episode airs. But give us what those are so people can reach out.
Yeah, so you can find us at Slate Milk, basically everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine. So at Slate Milk on LinkedIn. Give us a follow. I don't know what number like I said, I'm the worst at advertising myself. So I'm Justin Goodwin on LinkedIn. I don't really know if I'm Justin Goodwin 1 or 500. I'm sure there's plenty of us out there. So unfortunately, I don't know that. But yeah, if you want to give me a look, I'm sure you can find my smiling face somewhere on LinkedIn. I'm at JUTIN_G on Instagram. I'm not the most interesting follow. I've become extremely boring in my 34th year on Earth. Like I said, I have an awesome 2.5-year-old son who is an absolute maniac that I've been fortunate enough the pandemic has given me one thing. I've been home for the first 2 years of his life. So I've gotten to see him grow up. It's a bizarre and rewarding process, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I have a little girl on the way in July. That's going to be a new test. If my wife allows me out of the house, I do like to golf. She doesn't like how long it takes for 18 holes of golf to get played, but I enjoy that when I'm able to. And yeah, just hanging out with family, barbecues in the backyard in the summer. Happy the weather's getting better, and yeah, just looking forward to some good weather. I'm from Boston. So I experience the same type of weather that you're getting in New York, and sometimes a little bit worse. Sometimes that jet stream hits you very nicely, and I get snow, you get rain. But I'm looking forward to seeing some green leaves on the tree, Nick. Yeah, that's what I like. Green leaves on trees.
Well, that's great. So you've got a great life, and you're doing great work. So that's it, everybody. You've heard from the person who accelerates revenue, and you've heard how he does it. And this has been very valuable. Thank you, Justin. And I'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.